I enjoy watching the low budgeters because you never know. You never know if this low budgeter is going to be the next cult classic that offers up new horror and visionary terrors that those in the big leagues can't fathom or afford to take the risk on. Sure, I have to sift through some crap to find those chunks of goodness, but when you hit gold, it makes the slog worth it. This week, Low Budget Binge unleashes bees, mosquitoes, ghosts, snipers, and phone calls from the beyond. Let's start binging. Welcome back to ML Miller Frights. I'm ML Miller. Before we begin, please do me a favor and punch that like button down below. Share this video with all of your social media addicted pals. Click subscribe to this channel and ring that bell for notifications. Low Budget Binge is where we venture down the path less traveled and look at low budget, no budget, and sometimes international films that never get that top billing you see with the usual Hollywood fare. I'll indicate in the review down below where you can find these films along with their trailers. Here we go. It Knows You're Alone is available for streaming on Full Moon Features and on demand next week. It's directed and written by Christopher Alexander. After finding an antique phone on a beach, a young woman, played by Brandy Dawley, begins getting calls from the unconnected phone and sees a woman in black, played by Ali Chappelle, in her home, all of which wearing on her fragile sanity. Experimental filmmaker Chris Alexander seems to be churning out films like hotcakes these days. I just reviewed Space Vampire last week, and this week he has another film, It Knows You're Alone, coming out from Full Moon Pictures. Full Moon seems to have expanded on their output of weed humor-themed horrors, and it's an expansion for the better, as Alexander definitely has a unique eye for making surreal and experimental journeys into the darkness. While his films very often have very little dialogue, they capture all kinds of bizarre imagery and chilling moods. It Knows You're Alone offers up long silences and close-ups of the beautiful cast consisting of only 2 actors. Both do a decent job of bringing this simple story of a haunted phone to life, though most of the time they're just required to stare and move around as if they're sleepwalking. Haunting images and trance-like music are ahead of you if you take a chance on It Knows You're Alone. Alexander continues to tell brief but potent stories that exude dark feelings and moods. Running a little short of an hour, It Knows You're Alone is a trippy and haunting low-budget nightmare from a trailblazer in experimental horror. It's not going to be for everyone, but if you're a fan of Jess Franco's moody and weird films, you're the right fit for It Knows You're Alone. Royal Jelly is new on-demand and digital download from Uncork'd Entertainment. It's directed and written by Sean Riley. A young outcast named Aster, played by Elizabeth McCoy, is picked on by her sister and her peers, but finds a kinship with her substitute teacher, Tressa, played by Sherry Latanzi. Both shy away from convention and also share an interest in beekeeping. After a prank ends with Aster losing her own beehive, Tressa invites Aster over to her place to check out her hive. But the hive Tressa takes care of proves to be something Aster would never imagine and will leave her forever changed. I will give filmmaker Sean Riley credit for trying to tell a different and unique style of monster movie. Sure, there's been films like Wasp Woman and Candyman utilizing a natural fear of bees in order to cause icks and shivers, but Riley focuses on the body horror in Royal Jelly, making it much more of a low-budget cousin of Cronenberg's The Fly than anything else. With there being an abundance of vampire, zombie, and werewolf films being released weekly, it's refreshing that a film would tackle bees as the monster du jour. So the idea is there, and it's a fun one. I just wish Royal Jelly would have been able to stick the landing. First off, this is an expansive film that covers a lot of ground. It's the story about a shy and put-upon gal who finds her own voice and her own way against all kinds of adversity. There's definitely a Carrie vibe going on here. The school bullies even bring up that they want to douse Aster in pig's blood, but Royal Jelly's timeline is extremely out of whack. It seems a lengthy amount of time passes as Aster basically relocates to Teresa's home. The film doesn't make this passage of time clear. It makes it even more muddy by not really even addressing that Aster is a teenager who has basically run away from home. What's worse is that once Aster leaves, there's no reaction shown from her parents, as we don't even cut back to them, and it seems they aren't even looking for her. Astor's family is introduced at the beginning, but are completely forgotten by the second act. There's also a pregnancy that occurs at an extremely truncated length of time, and it isn't clear whether it's a speedy pregnancy or if 9 months have actually passed. Simple establishing shots don't seem to have any importance to the filmmaker, but it sure is crucial for me to understand the movie I'm watching. On top of that, the actors do things that make no sense at all. Why would Astor be interested in Tressa's son and want to sleep with him when his body is covered in sores and pustules? Where did the cowboy come from, and why is he there? What is Tressa's ultimate goal? Why is Astor, who's supposed to be a smart lass, making so many dumb decisions that are obviously putting her deeper and deeper into danger? Again, filmmaker Sean Riley doesn't seem to be interested in answering any of these questions. Instead, it seems Riley had an idea for a beginning and a shockaroo of an ending, but really no interest in getting there in a sensible or believable manner. Huge leaps in logic are made in order to get Astor in the place she is supposed to be in the end, and once she gets there, there really isn't a satisfying resolution given. What happens to the larva? Where's Astor's parents? What will Astor do next once she has uncovered Teresa's plot? There's just a lo-fi effects climax and then cut to credits as if the power bill was long overdue and shut off, and then the filmmaker just kind of said, "Okay, folks, that's a wrap." I don't want to be harsh. Actress Elizabeth McCoy is very beautiful and most likely will go on to do much better things. She's got an Anne Hathaway vibe going that makes her likable to a fault. Sherry Latanzi is okay too as the mysterious Tressa, and both McCoy and Latanzi work well off of one another when they share scenes. These two actors do their best with a flawed script and a very low budget. The effects are lo-fi too, and while I appreciate that they aren't your typical monster effects, it feels that the scope of the effects just were too much for the budget to handle. Also, the vampire teeth really doesn't make any sense. In the end, I would have loved to have seen what a few more $1,000 would have done for royal jelly. It feels rushed and not completely well thought through, but there are sparks of inspiration throughout. Companion is new on-demand and digital download from Level 33 Entertainment. It's directed and written by John Darbonne. Ella, played by Anna Flynn, and her husband Gus, played by Marcus Anthony, are trying to survive the end of the world. It's your typical apocalypse where most of the population is dead, laws and authority are gone, and the real enemy are the survivors, doing anything they can to save their own skin. The difference is that the world has been taken over by some kind of ghosts, or companions, as they're referred to, who linger around in the areas where they've been killed and are able to be tangible enough to murder and beat the crap out of others. At least that's what I gathered from Companion. This film doesn't really make the cause of these companions clear and plays pretty fast and loose with the rules of what they can and cannot do. This is because the focus is on the survivors and not the monsters, which is basically what Romero did with zombies all those years ago. Still, even though these monsters aren't flesh eaters, the survival aspect remains, and boiled down to basics, this is a film we've all seen before. That said, I really like the look of the companions. They're black and white creatures who skip in and out of reality in a staccato fashion, giving them ample opportunity to pop in and out of frame for a jump scare. The creatures apparently feed on fear, so this popping out of nowhere helps fill their bellies as it scares the shit out of their victims, and it worked on me a few times too. I also really like the lead, Anna Flynn. The rest of the cast do a decent job of doing what they do, but Flynn is the standout. She's quirky, bold, and brassy. She doesn't take direction very well, and when she takes a bath with the dog, it made my whole body itch. But her hard-headedness and spunky demeanor carries what is otherwise your typical survival movie. She's also pretty easy on the eyes, and I predict big things for this actress. Apart from the monsters being ghost-like creatures, Companion is a pretty run-of-the-mill survival flick. I could have used a little more clarity of what the companions actually were, and a little less angst from the leads. Companion also becomes somewhat redundant because it starts and ends in the same farm, but there's a reason for this loop the course of the film takes. The story's point is a bit foggy, though, as it asks some very tough questions of how relationships evolve in times of crisis. I applaud the film for tackling such a sophisticated and adult theme, but I don't know if it achieves the poeticism it reaches for. Still, Companion manages to be absolutely watchable because of its lead, Anna Flynn. See Companion for her performance. Prey is new, streaming on Netflix. It's directed and written by Thomas Sieben. Five guys go out for a hike for a bachelor party, but unbeknownst to them, they've walked into the sights of a sniper with a serious hate-on for men. With a silent female hunter stalking them through the woods, these guys desperately search for someplace safe in an unforgiving environment. While it seems to be a very common title for a film, try looking it up on IMDb, Prey proves to be a potent mix of man versus nature and man versus man, or woman in this case. The film is pretty simple, pitting the five guys against a sniper with a gun for most of its runtime, and rarely steering far from it. Prey is guilty of being almost too simple, as it doesn't have time for nuance or subplots. Sure, there's an internal conflict, and then the physical one, but these two rarely converge. Prey does a decent job of making the gun woman feel threatening, even though these five guys seem perfectly capable of putting up a fight. The fact that she wields a high-powered rifle evens the odds nicely. The internal conflict involving two brothers who are trying to get something from each other seems almost like an afterthought, as there are flashbacks of the two interacting that fills in some of the conflict. But one would think some effort would have been made to interconnect the two threads better. In the end, this is basically about a man who decides to man up and count on himself instead of others, as he seems to be betrayed and walked all over by everyone in his life. Still, one would think using a bachelor party as a rite of passage for a man about to be married would be great fodder to play with. The threat of a woman to this group also really doesn't work because, while these guys seem to not like each other, most of them are pretty okay and not really deserving of the end they deserve. Had Prey been focused on a bunch of chauvinistic jerks, I think the whole film would have been much more successful. The woman's backstory we learn in the clumsy of ways through a conveniently found videotape. While I didn't dislike Prey, I also think it missed a lot of great story opportunities. The acting talent was there to tackle such issues. This is a script problem where just stuff happens and then other stuff happens. There are some great shots of nature. The gore is okay, though it isn't over the top and doesn't really stand out. In the end, Prey is not a bad film, just a thematically anemic one, and one I'll probably forget as soon as I finish this review. Mosquito State is new, streaming on Shudder. It's directed by Filip John Rymsza and written by Filip John Rymsza and Mario Zermeno. Richard Boca, played by Bo Knapp, is a shy data analyst for a tech company who falls deeper and deeper into a life of seclusion and insanity after he's bitten by a mosquito. Instead of killing the pest, he allows the blood-sucking bug to live and breed, and soon he has a swarm of mosquitoes in his apartment. As his sanity fades, he becomes more and more obsessed with mosquitoes and less interested in the looming stock market crash that threatens to destroy his world as well as the world of his investors. Mosquito State is one weird little biscuit. It's a descent into madness story, and I love those, especially when this descent is low, gradual, and somewhat believable. Given the enormous pressure Richard is under, and the fact that he obviously has mental issues even from the beginning, his trip to Crazy Town is relatable even though his madness is quite bizarre. Mosquito State reminds me most of Willard, where a picked-on outcast obtains power by befriending millions of rats. Richard just does this with mosquitoes, and just as Willard was a flawed and sympathetic protagonist, so is Richard. Bo Knapp doesn't necessarily make Richard likable. In fact, he offers up a wonderful performance of an uncomfortable and unfortunate soul with his slouched posture, mumbling tone, and avoidant stares. Knapp also gives him a peculiar way of talking that isn't that different from the way Nick Cage talked in Vampire's Kiss. It's a really great performance that shows Knapp as a star on the rise. Charlotte Vega is also here as the closest thing to a girlfriend Richard has ever had. She plays an employee at a wine shop who is at first intrigued by Richard's peculiarity, but soon finds that his eccentricities run much deeper. Vega is gorgeous and holds her own against Knapp's powerful lead and a swarm of mosquitoes. It's also nice to see Unfaithful's Oliver Martinez as Richard's swarthy business partner. Though I haven't seen him much lately, he still does smarmy well. There are some strange effects going on with Mosquito State. Apparently Richard begins letting the mosquitoes feed off of him, and the swollen bite marks on his face and body will definitely cause some potent wincing. It did for me. The effects shots of the millions of mosquitoes is also quite convincing. This is a movie that'll make you itch in places you didn't know existed. The mosquitoes crawl all over Richard and dart away when he moves. It's something that occurs a few times in the movie, but you won't be able to unsee it after watching. These effects and Knapp's performance make this a movie that'll guarantee squirms and gasps aplenty. That said, the story itself is rather disappointing by the end. I didn't truly know how this one was going, but the ending they went with, while poetic, felt a bit shallow and unsatisfying. There is some wonderfully surreal imagery, and I guess it was trying to make a point about the blood-sucking nature of the stock market, but I don't think the film landed with what it was trying to say. Mosquito State exists as a wonderful character study of a very flawed man with a broken mind. There are some great musical choices of meditative music, and many of the scenes are beautiful to look at, but ultimately, Knapp and Vega's performances and the squirmy close-up imagery of the mosquitoes evolving and growing are the reasons to take a chance with this bizarre film. That'll be it for today. Please chime in down below in the comments and let me know how on the nose or mind-numbingly wrong I am, or you can counter with your own review. So guys, you know how YouTube works. I'd love to be able to dedicate more time to this channel. I'm not monetized yet, so if you want to help me out, remember to hit all the pertinent bells and whistles down below. Want some spooky comics to read? I have 2 new horror comic book trade paperbacks you should look out for. Both GRAVETRANCERS and Pirouette, collecting never-before-published issues, can be found in only the finest of comic book shops. If you're looking for written reviews, you can find them on my website, mlmillerwrites.com. If you really want to show your support, I also have a Patreon page at mlmiller. Look for the link to my Patreon page down below. Thank you so much for your time, and take care.
You're doomed to live the life you're meant to be, stuck inside your reality. You're doomed. Oh, you're doomed. You're doomed. You're doomed. Live the life that you are meant to be. Live inside that reality.